escalating estival frenzy, fever pitch and peaking at the high, zenith.
Hello, and welcome to Songs Nobody Asked Me For. I'm Nigel. I'm the singer and songwriter of the Plymouth-based indie funk band Curve, and this is my podcast. And very excited again today because it's another interview podcast. And this is me with Holly, and yeah, I'm really interested to meet Holly, and really enjoyed the time with her. Someone who really really close to my heart in terms of somebody being quite feisty and strong and having sort of views about the world. And any of you that have seen me talking to Pav, for example, know that I've always been enjoyed working with people who have a political sense about them and a sense of a conscience about the world. And Holly was great. I mean, she's kind of doing lots of stuff outside in the world. She's out in the countryside, she's teaching, she's sharing her ideas and sharing what she does and working with children and really doing just such amazing stuff. She's got strong views about Spotify and some of these organisations, which I would share really. And but she's not afraid to talk about those things. And her voice, I mean, I've been listening to some of her music, and her voice is stunning. And I think when she talked about her voice as her main instrument in a sense, and I could really get that really. So I love, and this is just my daft humour in a sense, that I met Holly via Ollie, and that Ollie, my friend who was our drummer early on in that process, suggested that it might be good I could talk to Holly, and it made me smile that he would be in a band with Holly and Ollie. It's kind of great. And we both start the conversation with talking about how much we love Ollie, really. He's such a lovely guy and listens to this podcast. So, listen, enjoy, come and get to know Holly, and then, go listen to her music, find her out there in the world, and support what she does. She's fantastic, and enjoy the interview. Holly, hello, and it's really lovely to meet you, and thank you for coming on. And we were just sharing our mutual connection to Ollie, your drummer, who was drumming for me in the past, and just talking about what a lovely guy he is, and moving on to thinking about the content of some of your songs I was listening to today, and thinking, I could see why you'd have things in common and connections, really. But
I mean, so Ollie and I actually we met through Instagram, which is, I mean, we were talking about these strange modern sort of technology platforms and how it's not, meeting in Zoom is not quite the same as meeting in real life. But Ollie and I actually met through Instagram, and it was his pictures of him doing volunteer bird ringing.
right,
I
right.
had put out a post looking for musicians to work with, and when I was looking at his Instagram profile, I saw all these pictures of him with amazing birds, including a
Mm.
ringneck, very unusual bird. And I thought, oh well, okay, if the birds trust him, I should give him a
Yeah,
go.
I reckon that's a good way of describing him, really. Yeah, yeah, and the birds trust him. Yeah, he's always had that interest. I gave him a camera once, actually, I think, because he collected, I don't know if he still does, but he collected cameras. And
Uh-huh.
I had a camera that my great aunt had had. It was one of these sort of like box cameras, and it was
Mm.
just sitting there. And I think he was actually using it, because he'd be the sort of person that'd get really interested in trying to work a really old black and
Yeah,
white camera.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, his photography work's beautiful. So yeah,
Mm.
he's got an interesting outlook on the world and
Yeah,
a true artist's eye.
yeah, that's nice, isn't it? It's good. So, listen, tell me a little bit about you, Holly. I mean, particularly, I guess, some people hopefully will know you and come and have a look at this, and some people won't. Tell us a bit about your music. How would you describe your music? I mean, I think that maybe that's a good way to start.
I mean, it's very much in the folk genre,
Mm,
um, but I'm influenced, as are we all, by quite a broad range of music, really, that I've listened to throughout my life. I won't try and list it,
great.
but it's very broad, um, and very much story led. I'd say my songwriting's very much at the core of my music, I am a songwriter, so it's very
Mm, mm.
lyrically led. And primarily I'm a vocalist. I love to sing. So the vocal really takes the fore, it's very much
That's
about um enjoying the acrobatics of singing as a vocalist,
mm.
enjoying that as a way of being in the world.
Okay, and that really makes sense to me. I've been listening to your music a lot today, and sort of in a very stressed driving place today, having to pop into various places, and it was really relaxing and pleasant to sort of listen to your music. And one of the things I would have, yeah, really resonated with what you just said was around that sort of the way you use your voice, and that your voice is it's beautiful. Really, I have to say it's amazing,
Oh,
and
thank
the way
you.
it moves around the song was really sort of quite prominent to me within that. Really, so I could see how you're a singer at heart, and that's
Yeah,
kind of what
yeah.
you love to do. Where does that come from, do you think? I'm always curious with people I meat, really, to think about maybe childhood influences, who was around in your family that was into music, where music came from for you as a person.
I mean, during my childhood, music was very much at the fore. Listening to music was proactive. It wasn't always just in the background. Sometimes it was in the background, but quite often, it would be pulling out an album from the vinyl collection, getting it onto the studio-sized monitors in a council house.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Studio monitors in the council house living room, up really loud and singing along. That
Awesome.
was
Yeah.
a proactive pastime of really savoring a particular album, really getting into it, singing harmonies. And my parents listening was there were some exceptional vocalists in there. So and they both loved music. They were hippies, so there was a lot of kind of campfire singing as well, within their friendship group, and that was a real gift to me.
Mm,
It meant I was in the mix with all these adults just singing along to their favorites around the campfire, and there were always great opportunities to flex harmony singing, and I think that's
well,
having exposure and access to that very young meant that it was very much just is very much just been part of my
mm,
upbringing, in a really organic way. I did also then, study music in school and had school choirs and things like that. But yeah, the relationship to music in my family was a very important part of our
mm,
lives.
mm,
There was always music playing.
and active participation, as you say, and it's been a theme of occasionally some of my podcasts are around why I think it's so hard for people to access original music these days, and loving their covers bands. And I think some of it's how we listen to music, and we,
Yeah.
we flick and swipe through music. Whereas obviously I'm a lot older, and when I was younger, we listened to vinyl. We got those LPs out. I did it with my friend. It was ceremonial. We'd sit there, we'd listen to the whole thing because you can't flick a track over, and you'd play it again and again, and you'd learn those songs, and you'd sing them, and you'd look at the lyrics, and you'd all of that stuff. And I sort of get that real sense of you as you're talking there, and sort of, yeah, you can see where those passions begin, really.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that thing of, I mean, it was buying CDs, first CDs when I was younger,
Mm,
buying my first CDs and like you say, flicking through the lyric book and really spending time immersing in that
mm,
with
mm,
friends, um and the whole relationship to an album as well, which is radically different these days. But
mm,
albums were so important, and the whole arc of an album, the whole narrative arc of an album was such a whole. I mean, I really love that myself. I really enjoy
mm,
immersing in the arc of an album and the whole world of an album. It's like reading a really great novel, isn't it? You're in that
yeah,
world for the duration, and
yes,
I feel like that's something that's slightly lost with streaming culture because it's very much about plugging singles and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think
It's
that's a
like
lot.
reading a book and picking out your favorite chapters, isn't it? You think, oh, I like
Yeah.
chapter five. I'll read that. Oh, I don't really like chapter six. I'll kind of move on, really. And you don't get this whole story, as you say. And you might get the beauty of the lyrics of chapter five, or the way it's written and the structure of it, but you're not going to get the whole sense of the meaning
Mm.
of it and
And
the beauty of
I
it,
think
really.
with streaming as well, because we know that it makes music so disposable that it's just
Mm,
swipe on, and I mean as a writer, you're encouraged to you've got to get straight in there. In the first like 5 seconds, you've got like 8 seconds to showcase everything you've got, or people will move on. And so it's not even like a chapter. It's just like a kind of quote meme that you have to kind of win people over. It's and then it really makes it very glib and
Mm. What's written on the back of the book, in a sense,
yeah,
like it's that
the
little bit on the
blurb.
back, isn't it? And you've got to get the right blurb on there in order to
Yeah.
sort of seduce people into thinking they might want to give you a
Mm.
bit of effort, really. Yeah, it's interesting. We'll talk some more about that. Yeah, because I'm sort of interested in Spotify and all that. I've been looking at some of your posts on that, and I got some
Oh
thinking
yeah.
about that. But we'll get on to that maybe later. I kind of how did you actually get into songwriting? I've also been really curious in this journey of doing this around how come I became a songwriter rather than somebody who I'm a guitarist, but rather than somebody who learned to play brilliant guitar or learned to sort of, be able to copy all of these leads and riffs and that. And I wonder if you have any sense of, well, I'd be interested to know when you started thinking of writing, but if you have any ideas about how come you're somebody that became somebody who wrote.
Well, I mean, for me, I was writing songs before I could actually write. I was writing songs. There's a shoebox somewhere in my childhood bedroom that when I dug it out, I was like, I remember this, and it's me trying to transcribe, trying to annotate a melody with word, and I'm trying to annotate, and I can see that I've tried to write words, but I don't have any spelling or writing skills yet. So I'm very little. I'm very little, and I'm
Mm,
trying to transcribe and annotate the melody of a song because I was always writing songs,
mm,
always. When I was really very tiny, I'd make up little
mm,
songs. And actually, I work with children now, and children
mm.
do innately come to song. They
Yes,
do innately come to
yes,
song. They innately are singing away to themselves. You get those types. I'm parenting
mm,
one. I meet little kids who are just sort of humming away to themselves, singing away to themselves, and they're writing little songs of their
yes,
thoughts, and it helps them, or observations around them. I mean, song is such an incredibly powerful tool in our language learning, in
mm,
our
mm.
if you put it into a song, you're more likely to remember it. I mean, I learnt my times tables through songs,
Right.
all of those things. Song is invaluable as a tool for us
Yeah, yeah,
because it helps things to stay in our heads. So children will write their own songs to help whatever is they're thinking about or
yes.
referencing or needing to learn stay in their own heads. And I think I was one of those kids. And um, I mean, writing songs for me is a way of making sense of the world. It is a way of um, kind of taking my experiences and sculpting them into something that I can um, sit with and be with and see in its whole and understand perhaps on some level as well. So it really is for me, it's a huge part of processing my lived experience is that writing songs. Um, so I've always written songs. It's
Mm.
just one of those
That's
things.
interesting. I was kind of thinking about that sort of childhood thing, and you're right, actually. I can think of little silly rhymes and things you make up as a child. And it's only because I constantly keep being curious about how people like us end up
Mm.
continuing to do these things and also putting our stuff out there and feeling it's okay. And that's the
Yeah.
thing one might do to put it out there. And I wonder whether, from what you were saying, it's something we lose or there's something different about us, more or less insecure. I don't know what it might be that means we continue to strive to put that stuff out or
I
to
mean, I guess
think that we might move into actually giving it to other people.
I guess I continued because I was given opportunity. It wasn't quashed in me. I was given opportunity. So by the age of about 11, songs I had written, I was performing those in public because of the adults around me gave me opportunity. Obviously, from quite a young age, I had intonation and I had vocal skill, and that was picked up on and I was singing with all these other adults because I had the opportunity of this kind of fireside or social singing among my parents' friends. We did a lot of singing collectively within my parents' social group, which is a huge gift.
Mm,
And there were adults there who would kind of draw me in and say, "Oh, you sing this part with me, Holly, sing this part with me." And so included me and invited me into that. And then also encouraged me to share what I was doing. And there'd be adults working out guitar chords for a song I'd written and accompanying me so that I could
Mm,
perform songs I'd written, 10, 11 years old. So
mm,
um, I owe them a huge amount really for making space, encouraging me and not squashing that because that's just pure luck, isn't it? It's pure luck that I happen to be within, maybe it's not because maybe it's a bit inherited, that sort of desire to do it, but that I ended up being within a community of people where that was
mm.
encouraged and supported from really very young.
I guess it's a mix, isn't it? Because I think, maybe there is that luck, and some of it's our personality, isn't it? Because I've come across one or two people within all this who had no support, no opportunities, but were determined in a different way, and that sits innately within them. But it sounds, yeah, it just sounded a very rich environment you were in to sort of. Do you play an instrument as well? Did you learn an instrument in all of that, or several,
Yeah,
or
when I was
200?
young, I learned flute. So I have a flute, still the same flute as when I was young, and I
Yeah.
have incorporated that a little bit. It's difficult,
Hmm.
obviously, at the same time as singing, so it doesn't make it in so often to live performance. But I have performed a bit with flute as well. But I'm also accompanying myself on the guitar. So I play guitar, which I came to quite a bit later, purely to accompany myself and kind of help me while I was writing songs because it's
Yeah.
useful to have an instrument to kind of give you that
Hmm.
feedback writing. Funnily enough, I don't play piano. I am learning alongside my daughter, but I don't play piano, but I actually find it quite helpful to sit at a piano so I can work out
Okay.
what kind of mode I'm in, what kind of key I'm in sitting at the piano. I find that actually easier than sitting with the guitar because I'm self-taught with the guitar. I've never had any guitar lessons, so it's all
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
in actual fact, it's only in more recent years because it's been required of me to tell the musicians I'm working with what chord I'm playing. I'd be like,
Well, don't know.
well, it's this one. And they're like, So I've had to kind of go off and work out what chord I'm playing. So
Yeah,
I tell the musicians I'm working with, and
yeah. I mean,
like,
it's an interesting because my literally sitting in my head was I was beginning to get curious about how you then brought stuff to the band you play. Again, I'm the songwriter in our band, and it's a both pleasurable and painful experience. The painful bit knowing that possibly a song won't make it because between us we won't work it out. But the pleasure of what I try to do is just say to them, look, here's the song, knock yourselves out, let's work together, let's see what you can create with this, really.
yeah.
And I suppose I wonder what your process was as a band.
That,
Does the band come under your name of Holly Ebony?
Yeah,
Is that?
Holly Ebony, yeah. Um and it really varies song to song for me. So sometimes I have a very clear
Mm,
sense because I can kind of hear it in my head of what needs to be happening in the whole kind of production of the song in terms of arrangement. So sometimes that's really clear, and as clearly as possible, I will sometimes create a sketch so
mm,
that I can relay what's happening in my head. Then it changes because as soon as you introduce other people into it, they bring their own thing, and that's really invaluable, and you want that. So, but there's a sort of line of, I mean, for me, with this project, ultimately, I will sort of say, oh, that's going off in a different direction. That's not
yeah,
really what
yeah.
the character of the song is, because usually the character of the song's quite clear to me.
Mm,
But
mm,
I'm not that type of instrumentalist, so it's invaluable to have other people's
mm, yeah.
input. Um,
But it's kind of benign dictatorship. That's what I always call it in my own
yeah,
band. We know that I'm kind of the boss in the nicest
yeah,
of ways, but
yeah.
a boss in which I really want to facilitate people bringing what they can. But as you say, the bottom line becomes me saying, actually, that's not right. Or I
Yeah,
wonder
and
if
it's
we
quite
could push
hard to do that. That is very difficult to do when you feel the character of your song wandering off. Um,
it.
and you sort of think, oh, who is that? Or sort of the song's lost in the sometimes it feels like the song's lost in the instrumental arrangement. You're like, oh, well, that's a shame because I quite like that song and I'm actually not, that is it's gone. It's like it's not in there anymore. It's
Yeah,
been completely washed out. So
yeah.
um it is a delicate thing and different people navigate that in different ways. I'm sure, and I have no idea. I don't.
Well, it's a visceral thing. It's a thing, isn't it? That's what it is. And yeah, and for us, very occasionally, as I said, there'll be a song that I love, and it just doesn't work, and I have
Mm.
to kind of shelve it, and I kind of
Yes.
think,
Oh, I know that really well.
yeah,
I
maybe
know
it's,
that
and
really
I
well.
was in bands in London in the '90s, and there were sort of kind of songs we never did, and then I had a long period I wasn't expecting in Plymouth of about 10 years of being a singer-songwriter, going out there with my guitar, and then suddenly I could do what I wanted, and then those songs found a home, So they're never lost, I don't think, but every now and then they're
Oh.
disappointing. Oh, right, that's not going to work. Have to
Yeah,
leave.
some of them really do have to wait for the conditions to be right for them to kind of
Yeah.
be met and fulfilled, and that's a huge part of it for me is serving the song. The arrangement, everything you're doing has to serve the song because for me, as a songwriter, the songs are they're outside of me. They exist outside of me. They're their own thing. They've got their own agenda. They've got their own kind of anima and agency, and they want to get out there and do something. But so it's about serving the song. And I can, yeah, obviously they're my songs and I can hear what they want to be. And they might wander off and do something different. And that also is, that also happens. I mean, if you have a song that gets very popular and is covered by other people and et cetera, you've got no control over what happens once your song has flown the nest. Um, but there is something about coming back round to, does this serve the song?
Mm.
In this first iteration anyway, in this iteration where as it leaves our palms, is it serving the song?
You're very
Um,
much when you said leaving the nest, it's very much like children, isn't it? Really, it's just kind
yeah,
of, yeah, you,
yeah,
you
they
nurture
are.
them initially, and you're around a lot more, and you're more in control of that. But then eventually, over time, they take on a space of their own, really,
Yeah,
or they meet new friends, and other people influence them. And
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
right. Listen to us. What a great analogy! It's fantastic. What's the scene like in I mean, obviously you're sort of around Totnes way, aren't you?
Yeah.
And you're doing folk music. You're the first sort of what I've called folk musician that I've spoken to in this, which is, I mean, I'm enjoying that as well, meeting, people from punk bands and sort of all sorts of different things. But one of the things that started me on this journey was playing a sort of an acoustic cafe night, which we rarely do, where it was two of us and playing original music with two groups that were doing covers all night and having a complete sort of like tumbleweed thing every time we played anything and thinking, why do I do this? And thinking, what's the point? And this came from that, and then I got over myself. But I wondered what the scene is like in the folk world and whether people are more open to original music or whether you still have those same dilemmas of places more and more just feeling like they'll only accept covers bands or people that are playing things they already know.
Well, I mean, I think there's more than one folk world. I think that's quite again, it's there's within that there's quite a broad stroke because of course with the folk scene there's a huge repertoire of traditional folk.
Yes, yes.
That's a very different thing altogether. So sometimes there's a sense that there's a sense that there's within the folk scene there's a folk scene that's all about the trad songs and that where there's not a huge interest in original song.
Mm,
And then it kind of tips more into, oh, well, is this singer-songwriter, which I always think is such a weird genre because it's like, well,
yeah,
um, yes, I'm singing and I'm the songwriter, but that tells you absolutely
no,
nothing
no,
about the music.
yeah.
Um, but that is, I often fall into that category rather
Mm,
than folk because I'm not a trad folk musician
yes.
and then acoustic as well or Americana. And I guess, I kind of walk a line between folk and Americana probably and acoustic because the music has multiple influences. It's
Mm,
not
mm,
trad in on any level, it's not a kind of from a particular cultural background that's very
mm.
specific and location identifiable. It's a bit broad in its influence. So yeah, I mean, I've had gigs where people are saying, "Oh, do you know any covers?" Earlier on, those gigs
Mm.
where people, "Do you know any covers?" And you're like, well, yeah, but it's probably a little bit left field, my covers. I've got a Regina Spektor song, and then there's Airport Convention song, and one by Lamb. Is that okay? They're like, no, no, we just
Yeah,
meant Kylie
you're not going to
Minogue.
play Hi Ho Silver Lining then. It's gonna.
No, so I think you have to find your outlets, and there are
Mm,
many outlets where people are curious to hear original music for sure. There are open mic nights that lend themselves really well to that. And poetry crowds, they're
mm,
always interested in original lyrics and
mm,
writing, and literary crowds. So it's kind of finding those ways in. Um, I mean, where I am, there's an incredible wealth of original songwriters within what you'd broadly call a kind of folk, contemporary folk, alt
mm,
folk, acoustic sort of genre. I mean, I have many friends in this area who are doing completely different but very similar things to what
mm,
I'm doing. And yeah, and I think you kind of yeah, that I think it's probably the terrible irony is it's probably easier to make money by being a covers band. That
oh,
is
it
probably
is.
financially more lucrative to be a kind
Mm,
of
mm,
wedding performance or sort of events cover band. And I have other friends who are in that type of band
mm,
and great fun and they love it and that it's they get
mm,
out and they can get big gigs um and fair play really because that also means that they're getting to enjoy being musicians um
mm,
and live that lifestyle and work together and all that joyful craziness that we know so well.
mm,
Um, but as for original music, yeah, I think I've really stuck to my guns with original stuff,
mm, mm.
um, particularly since working with a band. Um, and that's what I'm offering, and I'm not really I don't want to be a covers band, or a tribute band or anything like that. Although I see there's benefits to it. That's not where my interest is. It's not where my passion is. I have learned that there's real value in tucking in some, as a folk artist, some trad songs and some covers because it gives people an anchor point. It gives
Yeah,
people a reference point. So, for example, this kind of last year or so, I've incorporated the fantastic Sandy Denny song, Who Knows Where the Time Goes, into the repertoire at gigs. And it's really that, it's one of my favorite songs. It's one of my all-time favorite
mm,
songs. It's within the genre, this kind of broader genre that I'm working within. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous song. And it's a reference point for people to
mm,
measure me against or measure us as an act um, against something that's known. And there's value in that for people. I mean, it's also,
mm.
it's really lush to play a song you love and do it justice and feel like you're honoring one of your inspirations or,
Yeah, yeah,
to honor and remember your influences is a lovely
mm,
thing. So
yes,
there's real value in tucking in some known pieces. But primarily, I really love sharing songs that are genuinely relevant to me,
yes,
stories that are now and very much current and present and what's live, what's really
mm,
live creatively in the wider sphere, politically, culturally. Um, and that's why that's why I guess we all like to sing the most recent songs as well, or perform the most
yeah,
recent pieces because they're the ones that feel really live and where
mm,
the energy is. Um, so
yes.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a difficult path. There's loads in what you were talking about there, really, and it's kind of yeah. I had somebody at a gig recently just come up to. I was literally we were doing two sets, and it was I was last song of the first set, and I said we're going to take a break. The guy walked right from the very back all the way to the front. We were on the same level as everybody, and he just came up to me and he said, you could hear it in the microphone. Um, could you play an Eagles song for me, please? I was kind of like, uh, no, I can't really do that, and just saying like, I'm really sorry. We kind of, and it's just odd. He went, oh, okay. And he just walked back and kind of I thought you could have waited till the break and you could have come and spoken to me, or it's just an odd thing. But I think what you're saying is what I'm reluctantly trying to accept because I won't play covers at all, and I kind of the band every now and then say, "Oh, we need one or two," and I think that idea of reference pointing is a useful way of thinking about it. And I think especially if we have to go somewhere and play an hour and a half or 2 hours, it's a lot for people to have to process 2 hours, an hour and a half of music they don't know. Whereas if you're doing a half hour something or 45 minutes something, maybe it's okay to be thinking, I think you can cope with listening to me for this length of time. But and then it becomes the journey of working out what's the reference point, and I've so much trouble trying to decide on a cover as well, because you're trying to find something that has meaning for you, as you say, and then something you can do justice to, which is something you also mentioned there, and then maybe for me something I could do slightly differently. It's a conundrum, isn't it? But
It
I do think that yeah, the money is certainly in my genres or the areas that I'm around is covers bands, and but I think it's both the frustration and the joy of what we do is to find that uniqueness in where you find yourself and how you move forward in that, whilst knowing that if you don't say, you know, for me, we're trying to sort of meld some different genres, but if I don't say I'm an indie band. There are plenty of places that will have an indie band, but they won't have us because we're not indie enough or we're not sort of this enough or that enough. And it's part of the journey, isn't it? It's part of the frustrations at times, but it's just the world we're in these days, I guess. Um, yeah, definitely. I kind of it moves me into so I guess the last thing. It's always difficult because I'm really enjoying our conversation. I could sort of carry on talking for a couple of hours, but I try and sort of keep this down to about sort of between 30 and 50 minutes because I think obviously it's going to go out. People don't know you and I too well, and this kind of is nice for people to sort of have a sort of snapshot of us in a sense. I talked at the beginning about that idea of the politics of streaming, really, and you don't mind me saying, I saw a podcast of yours in which you, well, not podcast, Instagram post when you were frustrated about Spotify, really. And I've had my sort of battles and journeys with Spotify along the way. And yeah, I think this is around the idea of how we actually get paid or sort of acknowledged for the music that we write, what we do, really. And
yeah.
it's a difficult one, isn't it?
I mean, it is a kind of collective madness that draws us into even trying in this era to
Mm,
make a living, make it viable
mm,
as artists writing original music. And I mean, because it used to be that that your music could be part of your merchandise. That's part of your income
mm,
stream.
mm.
Now people are saying, oh, well, you've got to make tea towels and tote bags and
Talent.
eclectic merch because
Mm,
there's money in the music. But it's okay because the touring, that's where, somebody said to me, oh, well, when your recorded music, your releases are they're a kind of expensive calling card. They're a place that people can come and
mm,
find you to know what you're about. And that will lead to paid gigs. But we now also know that even really very well-established artists are not able to break even. They are getting into debt through their tours because touring is also not an income stream for
mm,
artists anymore. So it's like, well, where is the income stream? If you can't make money from performing live and touring and you can't make money from the music, where can you make any money? And then it's as if the world doesn't care about music. And yet we know it
mm.
does. We know that,
Yeah.
take music away from people completely, from radio jingles or movies
Mm,
and it will be, our hearts would desiccate within days. But we're in a bizarre era because we have AI music, which is now topping
mm,
playlists on things like Spotify. So, I mean, these streaming platforms that Spotify are particularly lacking ethically. They're really
mm,
exploitative, hugely exploitative. They don't pay artists for streams.
mm,
Then they've cut the threshold at which they're willing to pay people. So they're only really paying very well-established artists.
mm,
Really, the only people making money from those streaming platforms are the major label heads and the CEOs of the streaming platform. So, oh, it's a headache. It's kind of devastating. Um, Personally, my feeling is, and then there's this whole thing about, Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify, investing
mm,
600 million pounds, dollars, I guess, into Helsing AI military software, which is it kind of just it's so grotesque that it just makes it unpalatable to it
Mm.
just consider, and that they've had ICE adverts on Spotify, that, and we know that even this week it's become even all the more so
Mm. Mm.
disturbing to consider that these kind of actually quite extremist organizations now that are being promoted through, in between music. And it just feels exploitative beyond belief now, to a point where I just can't. Um, and then what do we do? There are better streaming platforms. There are streaming platforms that do have they're offering a better rate to their artists, and they do have more kind of ethical standing. Um, or you use a platform like Bandcamp where you're selling downloads, or you get creative. I feel like there's likely to be a greater kind of push towards analog,
Mm.
towards
Mm.
more analog, more human, more in real life ways of connecting creatively. And I'm not quite sure what those look like yet, but I feel like that's going to have quite a lot of weighting. This maybe, I'm noticing lots of people sort of saying, how do we get more analog for
Yeah.
2026 in our lives generally? Because there is a backlash to this sort of very technologically driven um AI waiting, and these huge corporations who are
Yes.
essentially taking all of the earnings from creativity. And it's not just music, it's
No.
also in all the arts. And
No. And I do wonder whether that part of it, because as I say, I was in sort of indie bands in London in sort of early '90s, and it was just as difficult in a different way. So, I mean, I guess back then, I mean, if I think of sort of, you go back to the '40s and the '50s, and people who sang and played music were sort of just employees, weren't they? You get brought into somewhere and you'd get given material to play, and that's what you do. And then you have a band like Beatles, maybe, and others who start to write their own music, start to get control. But the sort of minions underneath, it's always been very difficult to make any money. And back
yeah,
in the '90s, there we were out. You couldn't get your music out anywhere, so you're getting recordings done, but then you've got a few cassettes, and you can't afford to get vinyl done, you can't afford to get CDs done. So you're waiting for A&R men to come and discover you, which never happens, or they nearly happen, and then they sort of ruin your experience of playing because you're constantly waiting for an A&R man to turn up. We were playing gigs where venues were making you pay to play up in London. It was a big thing against it. It just, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking that in a way, these corporations and people, they've always screwed young,
yeah,
musicians. And, even the bigger musicians, how many of them end up suing their record companies because the record companies made them sign some ridiculous deal when they had no power and control. And I think this is just a morph of it, really. And I wonder whether, as you say, it's about moving back into something more organic again, and maybe a new place will come from it. I don't know. But I think what has changed, as you said, really, is the ability for new, younger, original acts to go find places to play and earn money in that way. There's less and less venues available and possibilities for people to do that,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, the hit to grassroots venues is quite devastating. Looking forward to young people who are kind of moving into wanting to explore performing and make those connections with audiences and with other artists and with other professionals. It's hard, I see that being really hard because actually young people are going out less anyway, because the
Mm.
cost of going to venues and drinking and all of those things is really pushing young people out of those
Mm.
spaces. I mean, it is interesting, isn't it? Because even if you really cast back, the sort of classical composers often had wealthy patrons.
Yeah, yeah.
They were, or even, within the court or nobility were funding those projects. And
Mm.
so that's not, it's really not new. It's really not
Nothing
new.
is
There's
new.
those people that were never able to access a certain kind of
Mm.
notoriety without some kind of sponsorship, or you had a very community driven folk music.
Mm,
That's the origins of folk music, is that
yeah,
it was from
talk.
within the
Mhm,
community and it was
mm,
celebrated in the community, but it wasn't seeking
mm.
to travel necessarily into other spheres.
I was just thinking that we're obviously talking about some stuff that's very difficult, but I guess I wonder where we the motivation or inspiration has to keep coming in the end from us just wanting to write because we want to, and to do stuff for ourselves. And there's there's these difficult things underneath it, but I guess at the end of the day, yes, we need to. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the right way to say that. It's almost like we need to fight those things and continue to push, but we need to be making sure that we're trying to create for ourselves as much as anything else.
I mean,
Um,
I think it for creatives of any discipline, there is a creative impulse that if
mm,
you try to ignore or you push it too much to one side and do not let it have its out in your life, it will consume you.
mm, mm,
I feel like if as the kind of person I am, I need to be creative for my mental health.
oh, definitely, me
And
too.
if I tried to just ignore that and I didn't tend to it at all on any level,
Mm,
I wouldn't be well.
mm,
I also know that it's good. There's a quality to it that has value
mm,
in when it lands with people, that people like it and value
yes.
it and
Mm,
and get something from it too. So it's a resource that
mm,
is worth making sure it gets into other people's lives because they take something from it and it kind of
yeah.
has an impact that
Mm,
uh, can be beneficial to their mental health, to other people's mental health
mm,
and well-being, and can inspire a kind of outlook on the world that,
mm,
I mean, a lot of my songs are very much inspired by the natural world and
mm,
by ecosystems and species. And I'm also, using that platform to promote people caring about them, people having care
mm,
for ecosystems and species in a way that I think is of value to those ecosystems and species, even if it's not a massive platform, even if it's not a huge stage or a
mm,
great big listenership, it just it draws in people's attention, and that
mm.
is, that's it's in service of something. And so I definitely feel that in order to kind of carry on with what we have already identified as a slightly um it's a slightly outlandish way of living life, to be a creative person trying to get our work into the world and make it viable in any way. It needs to be purposeful for me. I need it to be purposeful
Sorry,
for that.
my screen just went then. So yes, yeah, it does. Yeah, purposeful. I agree. I agree. And I think that we're in a obviously a human tradition of bringing new things all the time as well. And it's my fear of covers sometimes when I say to covers people when people are asking me why I do this is that if you didn't have any original music, you couldn't be in a covers band really because
Yeah.
you need the original music in the first place. And yeah, it's a wonderful and creative fight to sort of keep doing really. Um, Thank you very much for coming and spending some time with me. It's been really interesting to talk to you. And as I say, I would I hate having to sort of keep these things a little contained within a sort of little time bubble, really. But I really thank you very much. I would ask you where you're playing next and what you're doing, but I know I'm about 2 or 3 months ahead of myself. So by the time that's around, but I was well, you won't know, but on the podcast, I generally will be linking it to your stuff as well. So I'll talk to you about that in a minute when we've sort of said goodbye, really. But thank you for your time, and you
It's
know,
been really great to speak with you.
yeah, you too.
Come a day in May with no silhouetted present, an entire part.